I turned a plantation garden into a secret code by moving flowers one hand's width at a time, and the mistress praised the beauty while we used it to coordinate resistance. They trusted the garden because beauty is always assumed in centruses arranged for admiration. Lilies planted for perfection, paths trimmed for guests to admire. But I learned in my land that placement is language, that earth can speak when mouths must not, that a flower moved 3 inches left means safe passage while one moved right means danger ahead. So I began shifting blooms during my morning rounds, white lilies aligned toward the field path. Spacing measured in feet, that told time and direction. Patterns that guided movement after dark, when patrols walked past, but never questioned why the garden looked so perfectly arranged. Workers passed and read the code without stopping. Coordination deepened without a single word spoken. The overseers searched everywhere except the flower beds. This testimony belongs to the chronicles of Kiafai, an archive of survival strategies written in soil and bloom. Languages that looked like decoration but functioned as navigation. If you believe beauty can be dangerous when it carries meaning, stand as witness to this account. Signal that you understand what I understood. Speak your own memory of hiding truth inside what seemed harmless, because here is what still haunts me. When your enemy admires the very thing you use to resist them, decorating their world while dismantling their control, is that survival? Or is that the most dangerous form of rebellion possible? I worked the garden at sunrise, trimming paths meant for praise, not passage. The air smells of wet earth and honeysuckle. Dew clings to leaves. My shears cut through stems with soft snapping sounds. Birds call from the trees beyond the fence. The sky lightens from purple to pink to pale blue. I observe how the mistress inspects color and symmetry, but never asks who arranged them. She walks the main path each morning. Her dress rustles against the boxwood hedges. Her eyes move across the beds. She nods. She smiles. She comments on beauty, but she never asks why this flower grows here and not there. Why this color sits beside that one. Why certain blooms face the house while others face the road. There is no memory yet, only the certainty that beauty here is trusted without question. Pretty things are assumed innocent, harmless, decorative. The white folks see gardens as luxury, as status, as proof of civilization. They do not see gardens as language. I learn which beds are watched and which are passed. The beds nearest the house receive the most attention. The roses, the peonies, the carefully trimmed hedges that frame the entrance. These are inspected daily, praised frequently, protected fiercely. But the beds along the outer edges, near the path to the fields, near the servant's route to the well, these are noticed less. Expected, more trusted completely. I carry water between rows closest to the house. The bucket is heavy. Water sloshes against the sides. My feet leave prints in the soft dirt between the flowers. I move slowly, deliberately. I water the roses first, then the lilies, then the beds that border the walking path. I observe eyes linger only where a guest might look. The mistress stands on the porch with visitors. She points to the garden. She describes the varieties. She takes credit for the design. Her guests admire the colors, the arrangement, the perfection. But their eyes never reach the far beds, never notice the outer rows, never question what grows beyond the performance. The neglect of the outer beds triggers a faint memory of unguarded paths in my village. We marked trails through the forest, not with signs the colonizers could read, with plants, with stones, with arrangements that looked natural to outsiders, but spoke clearly to us. A certain leaf turned upward meant safe passage. A stone placed at an angle meant danger ahead. A flower growing where it should not grow meant shelter nearby. I begin mapping attention, not land. I note where eyes go and where they do not, where questions are asked and where assumptions rule, where beauty is examined and where it is merely expected. The garden is not just earth and water and bloom. It is a field of vision, a landscape of notice and neglect. And neglect is freedom. The mistress corrects a bloom's angle with satisfaction. She bends slightly. Her gloved hand reaches out. She adjusts a yellow rose, turns it 3 degrees to the right, steps back, nods. Perfect. She does not touch the stem, does not check the roots, does not wonder why it grew at that angle. She simply corrects the visible and claims control. I observe pride confuse control with care. She believes she shapes the garden. She does not understand that the garden shapes itself, that plants grow according to their nature. That arrangement is choice. That everything I place with purpose. Her corrections are superficial, cosmetic. My placements are structural, intentional, permanent. Her confidence recalls elders who warned that admiration blinds the watcher. In my land, we were taught to distrust beauty that asks for nothing but praise. Beauty that exists only to please is decoration, but beauty that exists to communicate is power, the elder said. When your enemy admires what you create, you can hide truth inside approval. I mark which flower she praises most. The yellow roses? She mentions them to every visitor. She cuts them for the house. She stands before them longest. Yellow is her favorite. Yellow is her focus. Yellow is her blindness. I file this knowledge. I will use it when the time comes. Workers pass the garden edge on their way to the fields. They walk in lines, bodies bent under the weight of coming labor. Hose over shoulders, buckets in hands. They move quietly, quickly, eyes down, but not completely down. Never completely. I observe glances that pause longer than work requires. A woman looks at the bed near the path. Her eyes catch on a cluster of white flowers. She keeps walking, but her pace slows for 2 steps. A man passes moments later. His head turns slightly. His eyes finds the same cluster. He nods. Once, small, almost invisible, then continues. The shared look triggers a memory of signs exchanged without speech. In my village, we learned to communicate under the watch of those who would punish speaking. A glance could mean yes. A turned head could mean no. A pause could mean wait. A nod could mean understood. We spoke entire conversations with our bodies when our mouths were forbidden. I keep my motions ordinary. I trend. I water. I move from bed to bed with the rhythm of routine. My face shows nothing. My hands stay steady. I am just the gardener, just the man who makes pretty things for the mistress to admire, just another body performing its function, invisible in plain sight. An overseer announces stricter patrols after dusk. He stands in the yard between the house and the quarters. His voice carries across the space. No movement after the bell. No gathering after dark. Anyone found outside will be punished. No exceptions. I observe tension ripple beyond the hedges. Bodies stiffen. Eyes drop. Breathing changes. The announcement is not new. Patrols are always strict, but the reminder means something happened. Something that worried them. Something that made them assert control more loudly. The threat triggers a clearer memory of warnings hidden in landscape. When slave catchers came near our village, we did not send runners. Too obvious. Too risky. We adjusted the environment. A branch broken here. A stone moved there. A plant uprooted and placed somewhere new. The land spoke when mouths could not, and those who knew how to read the land survived. The gardens, meaning shifts. It is not just decoration, not just labor, not just a place where I work. It becomes a page, a map, a message board written in soil and stem and bloom, a way to speak without sound, to guide without gesture, to resist without raising a hand. I notice which colors draw comment and which fade into habit. The mistress loves yellow, praises red, expects white, but purple goes unremarked. Green is assumed. Brown is invisible. Colors are not neutral. They carry weight, meaning association, and association shapes visibility. I observe yellow admired, white expected, red the yellow ignored. Roses receive attention. The white lilies are background, expected, standard. The red geraniums, planted near the back, fade into the landscape. They are there, but no one comments. No one stops. No one studies them. They exist below the threshold of notice. The pattern recalls plant markers used at home to signal danger. We did not mark danger with bright colors. We marked it with ordinary ones, with plants that grew everywhere, that looked like everything else. That blended, because danger must be seen by your people and unseen by your enemy. The mark must be obvious and invisible at once. I choose with care. I will not use yellow. Too watched. I will not use unusual blooms. Too memorable. I will use what is expected. What is everywhere. What eyes pass over because they have seen it 1,000 times. I will hide the signal in plain sight, in the ordinary. In the overlooked, I speak briefly with the field hand who skirts the garden daily. His name is James. He carries water to the workers in the distant fields. He walks the same path, same time, same pace, every day. But today, he pauses, sets down his bucket, looks at the flowers near the path. Pretty, he says. They grow where they will, I reply. He looks at me. His eyes are intelligent, careful. He has survived by being careful, by reading situations, by understanding what is not said. Do they? Some do. Some need guidance. His face, I observe understanding arrive without explanation. His posture does not shift, but something behind his eyes clarifies, focuses. He understands that we are not talking about flowers. That guidance means more than gardening. That placement means more than beauty. His readiness triggers my memory of chosen kinship formed under risk. In my land, family was not just blood. It was choice. It was recognition. It was the decision to stand beside someone when standing meant danger. James and I are not kin, but we choose each other now, in this moment. With this understanding, we become family. We agree without words. He picks up his bucket, walks on. I return to trimming. Nothing has changed, visibly, but everything has changed truly. The plan has a partner now. The signal has a reader. The garden has a purpose beyond beauty. That night, I pause before continuing this memory. I sit on my pallet in the quarters. Around me, others sleep, breathe, snore, whisper close in dreams. I smell sweat and smoke and the faint sweetness of the honeysuckle that grows outside. I acknowledge the danger of altering anything deemed perfect. The garden is the mistress's pride, her accomplishment, her proof of refinement. Any change noticed could bring questions. Questions could bring suspicion. Suspicion could bring punishment. Or worse, the garden is watched precisely because it is valued. Changing it is not simple mischief. It is tampering with something claimed as sacred. Still, observation must become action. I have watched, I have learned. I have mapped attention in neglect. I know where eyes go and where they do not. I know what is noticed and what is assumed. Knowledge without action is just observation, and observation without purpose is just waiting. I am done waiting. Morning becomes the transition. When light comes, I will begin. Not dramatically, not obviously. Just one small change, one flower moved, one signal placed. The beginning of a language written in petals and leaves, a code hidden in beauty, a message disguised as decoration. I remember elders teaching that land can speak when mouths must not. The memory comes sharp and clear. I am young, maybe 8, maybe 9. I sit with my grandmother outside our home. She tends her garden. I watch. She does not explain. She simply shows. She places plants in patterns, moves stones into arrangements, creates order that looks natural but carries meaning. Why there? I ask, pointing to a cluster of verbs. Because that is where they speak loudest, she says. To who? To those who know how to listen. She teaches me that placement is language, that the land can be written upon, that arrangements tell stories, that gardens are not just growth, they are communication. She shows me how to mark paths, how to signal safety, how to warn of danger, how to guide without pointing, how to speak without sound. The memory steadies me. I am not inventing this. I am remembering. I am using knowledge passed down through generations. Knowledge that survived because it was hidden, because it was disguised as something harmless, because it looked like beauty when it was actually survival. I decide placement will matter more than bloom. The type of flower is less important than where it grows. A rose in the front bed means nothing. A rose moved 3 feet to the left might mean everything. To someone who knows, to someone who understands, to someone who is watching for the language beneath the decoration. Strategy takes root, not fully formed, not completely planned, but beginning, growing, taking shape. I will start small. One adjustment, one signal, one test. If it works, I will continue. If it fails, I will stop. If it is noticed, I will claim accident. Mistake. Natural growth. The garden will protect me with its assumed innocence. At dawn, I shift a single flower. It is a white lily, closer to the common, path. Expected, growing in a bed with 24 others, just like it. I kneel in the dirt. I dig carefully around the roots. I lift. I move. I replant. I pat the soil. I water. The change is small, barely visible. The lily looks like it always grew there, like nature placed it, like I simply tend to what exists. I observe how the change appears accidental. The mistress walks her morning path. Her eyes pass over the bed. She notices nothing. Why would she? One lily moved 3 inches is not dramatic, is not wrong, is not worth attention. The bed still looks beautiful, still looks symmetrical, still looks intentional, just slightly different. And difference without disruption is invisible. The motion recalls small adjustments used to guide travelers home. In my village, a stone moved from one side of the path to the other meant turn here. A branch bent 2 point left meant go this way. A flower growing alone meant stop and wait. The changes were small, natural looking, easy to miss if you were not looking, impossible to miss if you were. No one questions it. The mistress does not stop. The overseer does not pause. The other workers do not stare. The garden remains the garden, beautiful, orderly, innocent. But now it speaks quietly to those who know the language, to those who are listening. Workers pass, and notice, James walks his path to the fields. His eyes find the lily, closer to where he walks, closer to the edge. His face does not change. His face does not react. But I see his pupils focus, see his attention sharpen, see recognition flicker behind his eyes. I observe recognition flicker, then disappear. He keeps walking. His body shows nothing. His expression remains neutral. But he saw. He understood, he knows, that the lily's placement is a message, not random, not accidental, intentional, deliberate, meaningful. The glance mirrors village signals answered without pause. When a sign was given, it was acknowledged immediately, but invisibly. A nod so slight, it could be nothing. A blink held 1 second longer. A hand moved to touch a specific place. The acknowledgement was there, but hidden, disguised, protected. The message begins to travel. James will tell others, not with words, with his own signs, his own placements, his own adjustments to the landscape. The code will spread, person to person, signal to signal, until a network exists, written in earth, hidden in beauty, protected by the assumption that gardens exist only to please. I hesitate, knowing repetition invites suspicion. One flower moved could be accident, wind, root, growth, animal disturbance. But 2 flowers moved creates pattern. 3 creates intention. Pattern draws eyes. Intention draws questions. I must be careful, patient, strategic. I remember betrayal, born of haste. A man in the quarters tried to pass messages too quickly. He thought speed was strength. He thought boldness was bravery. He was caught. He was punished. He was made an example. His haste killed him. His impatience exposed others. I will not be that man. I will not rush. I will not force. I will wait. I choose to wait. Days pass. The garden remains unchanged. I tend, I water, I trim, I perform my routine exactly as expected. The lily stands in its new place, alone, singular. It simply exists. Speaking its quiet message to those who pass. It does not require the garden holds the sign quietly. No drama, no revelation, no exposure. Just one small change, one subtle shift, one whispered word in a language most people do not know exists. And in that whisper, possibility lives. Connection lives. Resistance lives. The white man thinks gardens exist to serve him, to beautify his property, to display his wealth, to prove his superiority. He does not understand that gardens existed before they will exist after him, that they speak languages older than his conquest, that beauty can hide rebellion as easily as roses hide thorns. In my land, this meant survival. We could not fight with weapons. We could not gather in groups. We could not speak our plans aloud, so we learned other ways, quieter ways, ways that looked like nothing, that sounded like silence, that appeared as cooperation while actually being resistance. That is when I know the garden is more than flowers. It is a weapon, not violent, not loud, not obvious, but powerful. Because it is trusted, because it is dismissed, because no one suspects that beauty can be dangerous. That decoration can be communication, that something made to please can actually be made to protect. I do not forget. I never forget my grandmother's hands in the soil, her quiet lessons about placement and meaning, the elders who taught that survival requires creativity, that resistance takes many forms, that the most powerful rebellions are sometimes the ones that look like nothing at all. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there, smooth, warm, heavy with memory. A piece of home, a piece of the land that taught me how to read nature's language, how to write messages in earth, how to make beauty speak truth. I carry it always, a reminder that I am more than what they see, that I know more than they suspect, that I can do more than they imagine. Tomorrow, I will watch. I will wait. I will see if the message spreads. If understanding grows, if the garden begins to serve a purpose its creators never intended. Tomorrow, the lily stands alone, but perhaps soon it will have company. Perhaps the code will expand. Perhaps the language will grow. One flower at a time, one signal at a time, one small act of resistance disguised as one small act of beauty. The mistress admires the bed and praises its harmony. She stands on the path with a visitor, a woman from a neighboring plantation. They wear wide hats against the sun. Their dresses are pale blue and cream. They hold parasols. Look at the arrangement, the mistress says. She gestures to the bed where the lily stands. Such natural beauty, such perfect balance. I observe how approval seals blindness. She sees what she expects to see. Beauty, order, harmony. She does not see intention. She does not see message. She does not see that the lily's placement is choice. Her praise confirms that the signal is safe, that it is invisible to those who are not meant to see it. New memory now. Only confirmation. Beauty protects the signal. Admiration creates cover. The more she praises the garden, the less she questions it. The more she claims it as her accomplishment, the less she examines my role in creating it. Her pride is my shield. Her vanity is my protection. Days later, I align a second flower with the first. Another lily. White, common, expected. I move it from the back of the bed to the front, closer to the path. I place it exactly 1 foot from the first. The distance is precise, intentional, meaningful to those who understand that spacing is language. I observe the pattern extend along the bed. 2 lilies, same color, same height, same distance from the path, aligned, sequential, creating a line, a direction, a pointer. The pattern is subtle, could be aesthetic choice, could be design, could be the natural result of tending. But to someone who is watching, someone who is waiting, someone who knows. The pattern speaks. The arrangement recalls warnings stretched along a trail. In my village, when danger approached from one direction, we marked a safe direction with plants. Not one marker, multiple, spaced evenly, creating a line to follow. The repetition confirmed the message. One stone could be random. 3 stones in a line is guidance. Understanding spreads. I watch workers pass. More of them pause. More of them look. Not obviously. Not suspiciously. Just a glance. A moment. A recognition. Then movement continues. But something has changed. Information is transferred. Knowledge has grown. The code is being read. Movement changes near the quarters at dusk. People arrive earlier than before, gather in different configurations, leave through different paths. The patterns are subtle. Could be coincidence. The garden could be normal variation. The message is being followed. The signal is guiding behavior without commanding it. I observe people arrive earlier and leave later. Timing shifts. Routines adjust. Not dramatically. Not suspiciously. Just enough. Just differently. The changes are invisible to those who are not watching for them, but visible to those who are. The garden speaks, and its readers respond. The land guides them without command. No one gives orders. No one issues instructions. No one speaks the plan aloud. The flowers do the speaking. The placement does the instructing. The garden does the commanding. And because the garden is trusted, because it is dismissed, because it is assumed, innocent, the guidance goes unnoticed by those in power. Coordination deepens. More flowers are moved, not by me alone. Others help, subtly, carefully. A woman working near the outer beds adjusts a stem. A man carrying water shifts a pot. The code expands. The message, the language grows. Conversation. Multiple voices speaking through placement and pattern. Patrols increase, but the garden remains untouched. The overseers walk more frequently, watch more carefully, question workers more thoroughly, but they never look at the flowers, never examine the beds, never question the arrangements. The garden is beauty. Beauty is innocent, and innocence is invisible to suspicion. I observe suspicion. Look elsewhere. They search the quarters. The paths, the fields, the outbuildings. They watch faces, track movements, count bodies, but they do not count lilies, do not measure spacing, do not map flower placement. Their attention is where they expect to find resistance. Loud, obvious, confrontational. They do not see resistance that looks like decoration. The plan has passed beyond me. I am no longer the only gardener, no longer the only one placing signals, no longer the only one reading the code. The language has been learned. The method has been shared. The strategy has become collective. I started it, but now it belongs to all of us. The sign lives on its own. Even if I stopped tomorrow, even if I never moved another flower, even if I was removed from the garden entirely, the code would continue because it has been learned, because it has been shared, because it has proven useful. The garden speaks regardless of who tends it. Work slows in some places and quickens in others. The fields closest to the roadshow, less progress. The fields furthest from view show more. Tasks that were completed in certain sequences now happen in different orders. Productivity appears unchanged, but distribution has shifted. Effort has been redirected. According to signals, according to guidance, according to the flowers, I observe order bend without breaking. The system still functions. Work still gets done. Quotas are still met. But how they are met has changed. Where effort goes has changed. Who works where has changed. The changes are invisible to those measuring only outcomes, but visible to those tracking process. The memory of crowds, redirected by markers, returns. During festivals in my village, too many people in one space created danger, not from violence, from attention. from colonial observers who watched gatherings with suspicion. So we used markers to distribute the crowd, to guide people to different locations, to create the appearance of normal movement while actually coordinating collective action. The garden does this now. Here, in this place, control thins. The overseers still give orders, still patrol paths, still enforce curfew, but their control has gaps, spaces they do not see, movements they do not track, coordination they do not detect. The garden has created pockets of freedom, small, temporary, but real. The overseer complains of missed counts and empty corners. He stands in the yard. His face is red. His voice is loud. Where are the workers assigned to the south field? Why is the north crew early? Who authorized the schedule change? No one answers. Because no one authorized anything. Because there was no schedule change. Not officially. Not visibly. Just adjustments. Just responses to signals. Just people following guidance written in flower placement rather than spoken in commands. I observe blame scatter without a source. He accuses the crew leaders. The crew leaders blame the workers. The workers point to confusion. Everyone has an excuse. Everyone has an explanation. No one has done anything wrong. Not technically. Not provably. The counts are off. But why? The corners are empty. But how? No one knows. Or everyone knows, but no one speaks new memory now. Only consequence. The garden keeps its silence. The flowers do not confess. The beds do not testify. The lilies stand in their places. Beautiful, innocent. They speak only to those who know how to listen. And those who know how to listen do not speak to overseers. My ally warns me of close calls near the field edge. James finds me in the garden. He speaks quietly, quickly. They almost caught Samuel yesterday. He was where he should not be. They asked why. He said he was following the work. They let him go, but they are watching closer. I observe risk grow alongside success. The more the code is used, the more useful it becomes, but also the more dangerous. Every person who reads the garden is a person who could be caught. Every movement guided by flowers is a movement that could be questioned. Success creates visibility, and visibility creates risk. The warning recalls elders saying, every sign carries a cost. In my land, we knew that communication was never free, that every message risked interception, that every signal could be seen by the wrong eyes. The question was never whether risk existed. The question was whether the risk was worth what the message accomplished. We changed nothing. James and I look at each other. He waits for my response, for my decision, for my guidance. I shake my head slightly. The garden stands as it is. They are watching. They are always watching. The flowers do not change. He nods. He understands. Changing the code now would create more suspicion than maintaining it. Removing signals would draw more attention than leaving them. We are committed. The garden speaks, and we continue listening. The mistress orders more flowers planted to restore symmetry. She walks the beds with the gardener supervisor. She points. She gestures. She describes her vision. More lilies here. Another row there. Fill in the gaps. Create fuller arrangements. I want abundance. I want perfection. I observe how her pride multiplies cover. Every new flower she adds creates more placement options, more potential signals, more ways to communicate. She thinks she is improving beauty. Actually, she is expanding vocabulary. She is adding words to the language. She is making the code more sophisticated without knowing the code exists. Beauty deepens the code. The more flowers planted, the more complex the arrangements can become. The more complex the arrangements, the more detailed the messages. What started as simple direction go this way, not that way can now communicate timing, urgency, specific locations. The garden evolves from simple sign to complex language. The signal survives, despite patrols, despite suspicion, despite the overseer's complaints and the increased watching. The garden continues speaking. The code continues functioning. The resistance continues hiding inside beauty. Because beauty is trusted. Because decoration is dismissed. Because no one believes flowers can be dangerous. Movement completes its purpose and settles. Whatever the signals guided die, do not know all of it. Perhaps I was never meant to has been accomplished. The urgency fades. The frequency decreases. The patterns stabilize. People still read the garden, but with less intensity, less immediacy. The crisis has passed. I observe relief mixed with grief. Relief because success means survival. Because whatever needed to happen, happened. Because the code worked. But grief because success had cost. Because not everyone who read the signals survived reading them. Because some paid prices, others did not. Because resistance is never clean. Because freedom is never free. The cost is carried quietly by those who move last. The ones who waited longest. Who took the most risk. Who drew the most suspicion. Some were punished without proof. Some were watched without cause. Some were separated from family without explanation. They paid so others could move, could hide, could escape, could survive. Their names are not spoken. Their sacrifice is not celebrated, but it is known. It is remembered. It is honored in silence. Survival remains uneven. Some benefited from the signals and stayed safe. Some followed the code and were caught anyway. Some never needed guidance and suffered nothing. Some needed at most and paid everything. This is the truth of resistance. The cost distributes according to proximity to danger, according to luck, according to forces beyond control. It is not fair. It is never fair, but it is necessary. My ally is reassigned away from the garden path. James no longer walks his daily route. He has moved to the far fields. Different tasks, different hours, different supervision. No explanation is given. No accusation is made. Just a quiet redistribution, a preventive measure, a warning disguised as routine adjustment. I observe the price fall close. He was not caught. He was not punished, but he was moved, distanced, separated from the code he helped create, from the signals he helped spread, from the garden that spoke to him daily. His reassignment is consequence without conviction, punishment without proof, control without confrontation. The loss recalls the weight of chosen kinship. James chose to help, chose to understand, chose to risk. I did not force him, but I involved him. And now he pays not with pain, but with distance, with separation, with a quiet grief of being moved away from something that mattered. I carry this. I remember that every ally's safety is my responsibility. We exchange no words. I see him once more, walking a different path, carrying different tools, heading to different fields. Our eyes meet brief. No one said. He nods. I nod. No speech, no explanation, no goodbye, just acknowledgement, just recognition, just the silent understanding that we were partners in something larger than ourselves. And that partnership carried cost. Seasons turn and blooms are replaced. Spring becomes summer. Summer becomes fall. Flowers die. New flowers are planted. The garden changes, but not completely, not entirely. The patterns remain. The spacing continues. The code persists, even as individual flowers are replaced. I observe the memory of placement persists. New workers tend the garden. They are taught the arrangements. They learn the spacing. They replicate the patterns without knowing why. The code becomes tradition. The signals become standard. The language becomes routine. It is simply how the garden is arranged, how it has always been arranged, how it will always be arranged. The garden teaches new eyes how to read it. Workers arrive who never knew the original purpose, who never received the original instruction, but they see the patterns. They notice the spacing, and some, not all, but some understand. They recognize that the arrangements are language. That placement is message. That beauty is code. The knowledge transfers without being taught, because some truths are visible to those who need to see them. The land remembers. Earth holds memory. Plants grow in patterns that persist. Soil retains the shape of what was planted. The garden is not just present. It is past. It carries history in its arrangement. It holds resistance in its design. It speaks testimony in its blooms. And that testimony continues regardless of who listens. I pause before ending this account. I sit in the same room, the same palette, but years have passed. The garden has changed. I have changed. But the memory remains. Sharp, clear, certain. The memory of creating language from landscape, of hiding resistance in beauty, of making decoration dangerous. They believed the garden existed to please them. The mistress, her guests, her pride. They saw beauty and assumed innocence. They saw order and assumed control. They saw perfection and assumed ownership. They never questioned who designed the arrangements, who decided which flowers grew where. They assumed the garden served their purposes. Only their purposes. They never asked who else was reading it. They never wondered if beauty could be language, if decoration could be communication, if flowers could be code. They never suspected that the same garden they admired was the same garden that guided resistance, that the beauty that pleased them was the beauty that protected others, that the perfection they praised was the perfection that made survival possible. I did not raise a flag or a voice. I raised nothing. I simply moved flowers, placed blooms, arranged beds. I made adjustments so small they looked like gardening, so subtle they appeared as aesthetic choice, so ordinary they seemed meaningless. But to those who knew, to those who watched, to those who needed guidance, the flowers spoke clearly, and it was enough. Not victory, not liberation, not revolution, just enough. Enough to create pockets of freedom. Enough to guide movement, enough to coordinate resistance, enough to prove that beauty can be dangerous when it is used by those who understand that decoration is not the opposite of resistance. Sometimes decoration is resistance, hidden, protected, surviving inside approval. The white man thinks control requires visibility, that power requires force, that authority requires command. He does not understand that the most powerful forms of resistance are often the ones he cannot see. That strength can look like softness. That rebellion can look like beauty. That danger can look like decoration. In my land, this meant that gardens were sacred, not because gods lived in them, because memory lived in them, because knowledge lived in them, because resistance lived in them. We learned to write messages in landscape, because landscape cannot be silenced, cannot be punished, cannot be controlled the way bodies can be controlled. The land speaks, always, forever, to those who know its language. That is when I know my work was not just gardening. It was preservation. It was testimony. It was the act of ensuring that resistance would outlive me, that the code would survive beyond my tending, that the language would be passed to new readers, that beauty would continue to protect truth long after I stopped placing flowers. I do not forget. I never forget. My grandmother's lessons about placement, the elders' teachings about land as language, the moment I first moved to Lily and watched someone understand, the moment James nodded without words, the moment the code spread beyond my control, the moment the garden became something larger than my intention. I carry all of it. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there, worn smooth, warm, familiar, a piece of home, a piece of memory, a piece of the knowledge that survival requires creativity, that resistance takes many forms, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make beauty speak truth when truth cannot be spoken aloud. The garden still stands. I do not tend it anymore. Other hands do that work. But the patterns remain. The spacing continues. The code persists. Written in soil, hidden in blooms. Protected by beauty, speaking to those who know how to listen. teaching new generations that flowers can be language, that decoration can be dangerous, that resistance can look like anything, even like something pretty. And that is the truth they never learned. They thought beauty was harmless. They thought gardens existed only to please. They thought flowers were innocent. They were wrong. Beauty is only harmless when it is powerless. But when beauty carries meaning, when it communicates purpose, when it guides action, beauty becomes power. Quiet power. Hidden power. But power nonetheless. I stole nothing. I destroyed nothing. I spoke nothing aloud. I simply moved flowers. And somehow, that was enough. That was resistance. That was survival. That was the act of creating freedom inside a system built to deny it. One lily at a time. One signal at a time. One small adjustment that looked like nothing but meant everything.